everyone, George here, and welcome back to the channel. So one of the main questions that I'm asked a lot from people who are on my Facebook page or on Instagram are what are the most essential tools that you need to do a proper scape. It's really pretty simple. There are some kits out there that you can buy that do cover some of the most essential tools, but there's a lot of things around your house that you can use also, and people who are really into scaping use these tools, and you may kind of find them a little bit unorthodox, but they're absolutely, in my mind, they're absolutely essential tools to make you a better scaper. We're going to cover that in just a few minutes, so stick with me. So as I said, one of the most important things that I think that you have to have if you're going to be successful at scaping is a good set of tools. Now, this particular company here, the price of these tools run anywhere from $39 up to $89 depending on the quality of them. This particular set here is about a mid-price at around $49. Now basically what you're going to get for that, number one, buy a good set of tools, because I bought a really cheap set of tools trying to save money and skimp when I first started scaping, and I found out very quickly that you're just going to buy a second time if you buy just junk. And what I mean by junk isn't necessarily something that is for a hobbyist that's only going to do one or two scapes and never use those tools again. But if you're someone who is continuously scaping, don't skimp on it and buy yourself something that is going to hold up and last over time and really be of good quality. Now, the first thing I would tell you is there's two different kinds of tools out there that you can buy, and on the cheaper side, they're the black powder coated tools basically. They're not stainless steel. They have that powder coat on them, and you do a few scapes with them, and within a month or two you can notice that they're starting to rust in certain areas. So stay away from that stuff if you can, and buy yourself some absolutely good quality surgical steel type tools that are going to hold up over the long term. Now we're going to talk about the 4 essential tools that I think are the most important for scaping, and this one right here is the first one, and this is called a spatula, and for obvious reasons. It is large on one end here and smaller on the other. This larger is for some things that I'll be demonstrating here in a few minutes, and then the smaller area here is for getting into those corners of the tank where you need to move substrate around, and of course this larger end here is for larger areas where you need to move substrate around. Now, the second most important thing is a good pair of scissors. We're not talking about a pair of scissors like this, which a lot of people use. In fact, I'm not going to deny it. On the first couple of scapes that I did, I didn't have a kit of tools, and I ended up using something like this, and it works, but it's not ideal. The real important thing that you want to look at when you're using these kind of scissors is to make sure, as I said, they're good quality surgical steel, and that they also have a good curve on them. Now, the reason I say a good curve is because when you're getting in and trimming, you really need to have something where you can have your hand in a position where you can get down in there and just do a good job of cleaning up your plants. And if you're going to keep your tanks in good shape, it's going to be essential that you get in there and trim them up occasionally. And in order to do that, I really think it's important to have a really good pair of scissors that are going to hold up and be able to get into areas and not make it real difficult. There are a lot of kits out there that are cheap that sell scissors that are straight on. Really hard to work with, and I really don't recommend that. Now, the last two pieces in this set are tweezers, and the reason why these are so important is because you're going to use these probably more than anything for the planting of your tank. And the reason why there's two sets here is because there's two different kinds of planting that needs to be done in most scapes. And the first one here, for any of your ground cover plants in the front of your aquarium, what you want is to be able to go straight down and push those into the soil. And we'll be talking about and demonstrating this a little bit in a minute here. I don't want to make this video terribly long, but it is important, I think, to make sure that you do have a set of these and that you are able to use these for that straight up and down movement that every scape is going to require. These tweezers are going to be your most important. Now, these also have a bend in them, and you're going to find that the bend in here is absolutely essential for getting into cracks and crevices and areas that are really hard to work with. And you're going to really be glad that you have these, because without these, there is a tremendous amount of frustration that goes on, and you really just have to have this second set of tweezers here in order to be successful and not absolutely drive yourself crazy trying to plant your aquarium. So let's talk about a couple of things that are a little more unorthodox that you're going to find around your house, but you're going to use a lot. And if you've watched any of my videos on scaping in the past, you have seen me use these two items, and every home probably has them. I can't imagine that you don't, but if you don't, they're really cheap, they're easy to find. You can basically find them at any hardware store, or even sometimes a grocery store or a variety store of some kind is going to carry those. And what did I do with them? Oh. So, the very first thing is a paintbrush. And you're going, what is he going to do with a paintbrush? Well, the bottom line is, when you've got all your hardscape done, and your rock is in, your wood is in, and before you start your planting, you're going to find that a lot of substrate is all over your rocks and sometimes on the wood, and you are going to need a angled brush like this here to go in there and sort of clean everything up off those rocks. This just makes it so much easier to clean those areas up and make them look good. And I just think, you know, for a few dollars, you know, this one here has been through absolutely, I can't even tell you how many scapes. It's so worn down on the ends here from getting in between rocks and things like that. But there's another tool here that I think is just as essential, and that's the turkey baster. Yeah, turkey baster. What do you do with a turkey baster? You're like, that seems bizarre. What do you need that for? Well, they kind of work together, these two. And the reason why is when you're cleaning things off with that paintbrush, you may not be able to get into areas that are accessible, is I guess the best word for it. So you're going to need something like this to go in there and sort of just, you know, squeeze it like this and blow that stuff off areas that you can see with your eye but you cannot get to with this paintbrush. So yeah, this is very important to have on hand. You'll also find that this is a great tool for taking water samples. You get a little bit of water out of there to put into your little test kits. Instead of trying to get it perfect, you can do it with this really easy and really quickly. This is a very versatile tool in almost every aquarium. And the other time that you're going to find use for this basically is when you're doing water changes and you're doing that vacuuming of your substrate. A lot of times we get particles that are drifting around in there and they settle all over the tops of the leaves of the plants and stuff like that. And what you'll find is with this guy, you'll be able to go in there and just blow little amounts of water around in there that are going to blow that stuff off there and let it, you know, very nicely settle back into the bottom of your tank. And when you do that, always start at the very top, of course, and work your way down, because that's the most effective way that you're going to clean up all of that stuff. So these are really the 6 basic tools that I recommend that everyone gets. Now we're going to take a few minutes and show you how to use all of these and you know, give you an idea as to why they're important. So stick with me and I'll be right back. So one of the most important things that you want to do before you get into working with these tools in this tank is to make sure the number one thing you do is wash your hands, because a lot of times we have things on our hands that we stick into the tank that we don't even know about. We might have you know, put moisturizers on our hands or face or whatever and failed to clean that. And the last thing you want to do is introduce toxins into your tank accidentally. So what I always do as a good practice is just take a couple of minutes and wash my hands. Now, the second thing, and I'm going to do that right now, is to shut everything off, basically. Well, not the light, but you definitely want to shut the pump off. You don't even need to really shut the heater off, but you do want to shut the pump off so that you're not working in a tank that has a lot of water flow going on around it. So we're going to work on this tank a little bit here because there's a couple of things in here I've been meaning to do, and I just thought, you know, why not do them now? So I'm going to go ahead and shut the water pump off on this. And that's pretty much it for that. So now we have basically a tank that is calm. It is, you know, a situation where the fish are actually going to be less active too. Unfortunately, immediately when you put your hands in the tank, the fish are going to do what they're normally going to do. They're going to freak out. That's just basically what fish do. For obvious reasons. So the first tool I want to use is to go in there with the spatula, and I hope I'm not in front of the camera in any way, and just sort of clean up some of these areas right here that the fish have either moved around or you know, something else has disturbed this substrate here. Now this is also good for cleaning any kind of algae off the glass and moving the substrate back also, as you can see here, and just sort of evening it out. And as I said, there are 2 types of ends on this for different purposes, and as you can see, I'm just basically going along and moving things around and getting it evened out. And yeah, the fish are freaking out a little bit, but they're okay. You're not going to hurt them. Basically, you're in their territory, you're messing around with their house, and they're not real excited about that. Now, the other thing to have on hand, it's very important as you're using these tools, you want to have an extra rag on hand where you can dry them off. so that you are making sure that they are not wet in any way. Now, this is surgical steel, it's not going to rust, but I just like to keep them in good shape. Now, the second spatula here is for corners like this where it's really hard to get in there with the big one, and just sort of even things out. And I'll go down here and do the same thing on this end. And as you can see, everything looks nice and even across the bottom here. There's an area right here that's a little bit high up. I've got a little African cichlid in here that these guys are really aggressive. They when you're cleaning in the tank here, man, they're just really in the way, and they just don't like it. It's just their nature, and anybody that knows African cichlids is going to attest to that, these guys can be very, very, very angry with any kind of messing around with their tank at all. So again, it's important, as I said, to clean these off and make sure that they get dried correctly, and you can just put them back. I always put a towel down here because in this particular case I have a nice piece of furniture here that I don't want to mess up, but you know, if you just take a little bit of care with making sure that you clean everything up, it's not going to hurt anything in the short term. So now the next thing is I'm going to trim a few of these plants up, and this one here is a little bit tall. You want to be careful and move it around and make sure you're cutting it in the spot that you want to get it, and that may mean moving some other plants out of the way, but you basically want to make sure that you cut it in the right area. And you can just let that drift to the top. It's not a big deal. Same thing with this one over here. It's a little bit tall. We're going to trim that one up, and this one here as well. And now what I find is when I'm trimming these cuttings, I put right back into the same tank. And as you can see, that was a demonstration of the angle in which it's important. Actually, there's one back here that I've been wanting to cut too. This one's getting awfully tall. I try to cut them as close to a piece at the top here so that it doesn't look funny, but another shoot will grow right off the top of that in a short period of time. So now we've got some cuttings here, and this is where the tweezers come in, and we start to use those. But again, dry off your tools as you're going along. You don't have to you know, spend a lot of time on it, but any real severe amounts of water or anything that you might have spilled, it gives you a chance now to sort of clean that up and go into the next phase of doing this. Now, pretty much with all the tanks that I have, I'm doing this all the time. This is not something that I do just once in a while. Every once in a while is not good enough with a tank with me. You really have to stay on top of keeping these tanks in good shape, and the only way that you're going to do that is by doing maintenance on them as often as you can. And I try to do that on the bigger water changes that I do once a month on these tanks. Like I said in most of my videos, I do a quarter water change about this much at least once a week, sometimes twice a week depending on the size of the tank and how much stock you have in the tank. But anything that requires that kind of maintenance, while you're doing the water change, just get it done. Have your little toolkit out and ready to go, and you know, it makes it pretty easy really. So now I'm going to use these. Now they have a little bit of a rubber band up at the top here, as you can see, and that keeps these together in the bag so that they're not scratching up each other or creating a situation. All you got to do is squeeze these together and that slides right off, and you can put it right back on when you're done. So what I'm going to do basically at this point is grab these cuttings right here, and I'm going to get them in a way that is most maneuverable for me. And as you can see, I've got that cutting now, and I'm going to try to look for a place where I want to put it. Now I want to try to put it someplace that's close by the same kind of plant and push it down into the soil. And by doing that, I am basically just replanting that right in there. And we're going to do the same thing with this guy here. This was a bigger one that we got out in the last part of the cuttings that we did here, and we're going to shove that down into the soil. You're not going to be able to see that probably for a while because it's going to take a while for it to root, but it will root over time. And you know, you're not going to sometimes get this done real easy the very first time you try to stick them in the soil, because their tendency is to want to float back to the surface. And we'll just finish up these last two cuttings here. I'm trying to stay out of the view of the camera here so that I'm not in your way, but at the same time give you an idea on you know, how I'm going to grab these and bury them in the soil. So I'm going to put this one, oops, that one got away from me there. Sometimes it's hard to maneuver this stuff around in the water, but just grab a hold of it and grab it like that, and try to find a spot for it down in the soil and bury it nice and deep, because if you do that, you're going to find that it is going to stay down in there where you want it to be. And like I said, try to plant these right next to the area where the plants are the same or similar. And again, I'm going to push that down into the soil, and then we're going to, you know, release it, move some soil around it so that it's in there real well. And now you've got a brand new cutting and a brand new shoot, and you're constantly putting back more plants into the tank, and you're doing it with the cuttings that you've just used. This saves you a ton of money on going out and buying plants, and you just, you know, you're going to have a little water. That's just the way it is. There's a little bit of water that's going to come off that. So what I like to do with this particular set here, again, squeeze it and that comes right off, is to go in and move the soil around the areas where I just planted, and use these to sort of push the soil around the plants so that they're well seated in there. And I'm going to walk across here, excuse me for doing that, but do the same thing over here where I planted this one. You can't see this over here because of the camera angle, but I'm basically doing the same thing. I'm just moving these plants around to make sure that they are well rooted and they have a lot of soil around them to keep them from floating back to the top of the surface, and it gives them a good chance to root. Now, while I was in there, I did see that there was a piece of plant that had died off. I went ahead and grabbed that. It's a good time while you're in there to make sure that if there is any dead plants in there, that we trim those off. Luckily for me, there's not a lot of dead plants in here that are something that I need to pay a lot of attention to. So really, that's about it. But it just gives you a little bit of a demonstration as to how these tools work, how essential they are, keeping your tanks in good shape. What we're going to do when we come back is just recap a little bit about what we did. Oh, there is one more thing I wanted to show you, and that is that I don't have any reason really. If you wanted to get a water sample, for example, you could do it just like this, and as you can see, that does fill up your turkey baster or baster. It doesn't necessarily have to be for turkey, I guess, but it does fill it up. But what you would really be using this for is kind of like blowing stuff off rocks and things like that, to keep any dust or debris. I don't have anything really on these rocks because this is a well-maintained tank. There's a little bit, I guess, right there that I just blew around a little bit, and it just keeps all of those rocks looking tidy and clean. And I just wanted to demonstrate that for you so that you did see the use of this baster here and why I think it's essential. Now, I don't really need to use the brush in here either, but I do see some spots in here where I can just take the brush and tap down any of the substrate that's maybe high and not really sitting perfectly nice cosmetically. And the nice thing is you can get these bristles right down into these little cracks, and it works really, really well to do that. And again, if this was a new scape, I would be using this to, get any kind of stuff off, such as substrate that might be, spilled on there because, we're doing a new scape here and that sort of thing. So, having said that, that's pretty much the use of all of these tools. I hope that was a good demonstration on why these are essential. And when we come back, we're basically going to kind of recap what these tools were used for. And I will tell you a couple of different companies that I'm going to put that down below. In the video here, I will add that as to a place where you can get some of these tools. And like I said, obviously the paintbrush and the baster are things that you can get from pretty much any hardware store, grocery store, and that kind of thing. So now we've basically trimmed the plants up. Everything's looking really good in there. And we've got some new cuttings that we've put down into the soil, and those will take root. Trust me, within a week or two, those things are going to be rooted and they're going to be growing, and you are going to have a lot more volume to your plant. So like I said, when we come back, we'll recap this, and we'll do that in just a minute here. So I hope that was a good demonstration and not a tedious one about how some of these tools work. I know there's a lot of people that ask me questions about what I think are the best tools for scaping and maintaining your tank. And again, I think these four right here are all you need. There are larger kits out there that are really, really expensive. We're talking $100 to $200 range that it's just not necessary. I'm not trying to take business away from those people, but if you're somebody on a budget and you're trying to do this, $49 kit like this is really going to do the job for you. They're basically, they come with a nice little bag here where you can put all of these back in here really easy and store them. There's even companies that have a magnet that you can put up on a wall or something like that, and these will stick to that. And that comes in handy for somebody that is, for example, using them all the time in a gallery like I do. I don't have one of those up just because I don't have a reason to do that. I just basically keep this little kit around in a drawer right here with the rest of them. And I hope that I was able to demonstrate to you some of the uses of those. I know the paintbrush and the the baster are kind of a bit unorthodox, like I said, as far as what you would consider a tool. But you can see by what I did that they work really, really well. The paintbrush is probably most important on a newscape. I use it, as I showed you in that demonstration, periodically when the substrate's been kind of moved around by the fish. Sometimes you get a pleco or something like that that's a digger. Even certain South American pistios or cichlids will tend to move dirt around a lot. In fact, killifish are just absolutely known for doing that sort of thing. So that's a good tool, that paintbrush, for moving large amounts of substrate around when you're initially building a new tank. Getting that good slope on there. Paintbrush really does a fantastic job of doing that very quickly. And as I said, the baster, great for water samples, great for blowing any debris off leaves of plants after you've cleaned your tank, or off rocks and that sort of thing. So anyways, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for spending some time with me on a subject that I've been asked a lot about, and I felt it was important that we talk about that and give you some ideas. Now, I will leave at the bottom here the names of a couple of different companies where you can get some reasonably priced kits, or if you want to, they sell kits anywhere from $29 to $49, all the way up to, like I said, $100 to $199. So I don't think those kind of kits are necessary, but I will leave down at the bottom of the video here in the information section all that information so that you can go and purchase these. And I'll leave several different brands so that you're not stuck on one particular brand, because I'm not trying to gear you towards one brand or another. These I didn't even show you the name of the company because I don't think it's necessary, but these work great for me and they'll work great for you. And like I said, for $49, surgical steel, stainless steel, they're going to last a long time. You're not going to have rust, you're not going to have problems with them getting corrosion on them of any kind. So anyways, thank you again for joining me. Hit that like button and give us a thumbs up there. Subscribe, and please leave your comments. As I say all the time, your comments are the most important thing to me. It helps me to learn from you, and also gives me an idea of what content you might be interested in the future. So again, thank you so much. Don't forget the bell up here. I think I finally got that down. I always go like this here and I look like an idiot, but I really believe it's up on this side here. And I'm pretty confident, so I'm going to point up there. But hit that bell so any new content that I have coming out, it makes you aware. So anyways, thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you on the next one. Until then, we're out of here.